Hello Internet! In this video we are going to be making a mesh preview window editor thing. That was going to go better than I planned. But anyway, so what this is going to be is there is a probably never really used thing called the preview, I have it here just for reference, the PreviewRenderUtility. And so what this does is it allows you to actually render a mesh into a texture using a camera that you set up. And so if you actually look at a mesh like this, that's the same, it's sort of the same thing, but you have to implement all of this yourself. Because all it does is you give it a mesh and a camera location and a light, and then it draws it to a texture and you do everything else. So that's sort of what we're going to be doing, because where we're going with this is I want to bring previews to Unity shell. So right now we just get text. So if I do something like this, we just get can't find command, because obviously that's not a command. But the only output from this right now is strings. And so you just get these messages. What I would like to do is be able to, if I select a mesh or a material, I want to be able to preview that in the shell, ideally, and then send it somewhere else. And so in order to enable that, we're going to kind of explore this whole thing. And so this is going to give us a way to actually preview materials and preview meshes from our shell, which sounds weird because that isn't really something you'd normally get in a shell. But anyway, on the other side here, I have this mesh preview editor, which is just super simple. It just grabs a selected object, like the selected cube, checks if there's a game object selected. If there's a game object selected, it then checks to see if it has a mesh filter and a mesh render. If it has both of those, then we get a cube selected. So the code for that looks something like this. This is all of that filtering. And then at the end, we have a mesh filter and a mesh render with the game object in the selection.activeGameObject. And so we should be able to use all three of those to actually draw the thing. So what I need is there is a PreviewRenderUtility. Let's create a preview render, I guess we can call it. And I am going to, yeah, we'll just do a public constructor. Is that a good idea? That might not be a good idea. Hold on. No, let's do a public void initialize. That'll be easier. And so what we're going to do is we're going to create this, say it's equal to a new preview render utility, like so. And so this is just going to define, this is our renderer. It's going to do all of the rendery things. So we have an ambient color, we have our camera, we have our lights, if we want to add lights to this, and then we have things like draw mesh. And so we just give it a mesh, we give it the transform, the material to draw it with, and then the submesh index, and it will just draw it, which is great. So if I want to draw the mesh, we're not going to do that here. But anyway, if I want to do that, that's how that whole thing works. So we've got that. Now, at the very end down here, it should already be initialized. So what I'm going to do is if preview render is equal to null, if it hasn't been initialized, then we'll initialize. And so this will just create a preview renderer and set up all of the components we need if they don't exist. And there's no need to do that if you never select a mesh. We can just lazily load it, which is why we can put this down here instead of up in front, where it would automatically get initialized regardless of if you ever select anything. We don't need a previewer if we aren't previewing anything. So let's do preview render dot, and then I don't exactly know how all of this works. Because I have never used it. Yeah, so there is an end preview. Hit a bunch of buttons there. So if I understand this correctly, there might be a start. Yeah, begins static preview and ends static preview. I don't know the difference between a static preview and a preview. So we may want to check that. But what I'm going to do is begin a static preview that is going to fill the entire editor. So we're actually going to draw this first. So I'm going to actually draw selected mesh, and we're going to give it the mesh filter dot mesh and the mesh renderer dot material, and that should be it. So that's going to give us our selected components, and then we can just use like 0, 0, 0 and the identity matrix to kind of render everything. But if I do this and then end static preview, we'll get a texture. This will be our render. And so what I want to do is actually just draw this to the screen. So we're going to get to this, but ideally this whole thing is going to be the exact same size as our window. So we'll just fill the entire background and then we'll draw some stuff over it. And I don't entirely know how this whole thing is going to work, but we're going to figure that out. So this render is going to be our resulting texture. We aren't rendering a mesh yet, so it doesn't really matter. But what I'd like to do is draw that. So let's do an editor GUI dot draw texture. Draw a preview texture. I don't think I want that. Draw texture transparent or draw texture with an alpha. Let's try this and just send our render to that. It's expecting a rectangle. Shoot. Because this is expecting a rectangle too, let's actually just grab that. Is there an easier way? We can do this dot rect dot window bounds. No, there's got to be something. Min size, position. Yeah, we can give it the position. This may not work, so I'm going to actually rect because it's expecting local coordinates to the editor window. That position is not going to be local to the editor window, so that won't necessarily work right off the bat, but we can make it work. So we'll just do boundaries and create a new rectangle. And so this is going to take our position dot width and position dot height. Now this is wrong because we don't have an X and a Y. Because rectangles are made from an X and a Y coordinate and then the width and the height. So we're giving it 0, 0, so the top left corner of our window, and then the width of the window and the height of the window. And hopefully all of that is correct. And then I should just be able to output that there, and that will give us a preview that is the same size as our window. And then we're going to draw that preview to the same size of our window. And then we also need the render output, and everything should be good. Can I divide that by 2? I kind of don't want it to fill the entire thing right now, just so we have a example of what it should look like. What's the best way to do that? This will be gross, but it'll work. So we're going to do that, and then do boundaries.width divided by 2. And boundaries height divided by 2. So this will take up a fourth of the window. It'll take up half of the height and half of the width. And then we should get like a little render of nothing. So I'm hoping that this draws like a box, like the background box. Yeah. So you just get this white box. And I assume that's because our camera, nope. Oh, we're getting a bunch of errors. Uh-oh. Parameters do not match signature. That's some other thing. This will leak meshes. Let's do the shared mesh and the shared material. That should fix that. So if we're taking the mesh out each time, that's actually going to create a unique instance of the mesh every single time we do that. So we can modify that mesh or that material. We don't need to worry about that. So we're just going to take the shared one that's shared between all of the assets that use it. And that should hopefully make everything just work a little bit smoother. All right. Now, this is drawing a thing. That's good. I would like it to not be white, but we can figure out what's causing that. Instantiating material due to something. It seemed to be saying the same thing. I'm going to recompile that. That should bring those errors back if they're recurring. Otherwise, they just won't appear anymore. Okay, it looks like we're good. Invalid cast exception. That's not relevant. That's a Unity shell error, so we can ignore that for now. So the other things we need to initialize is going to be our camera, which we haven't really done anything with yet. So we're going to do a PreviewRender.camera, and I think we need to create a new camera. Do we need to create a new camera? I don't know. No. Background color. What is it called? We need to change how this looks. Camera, and let's actually background color. Set this equal to like color.red. Hopefully this makes it red. If it does, I actually know what I'm. Nope, I don't know what I'm doing. This might take a little bit of trial and error. I kind of specifically didn't read up too much on this because I kind of want to just feel it out, which is not necessarily the best if you're trying to learn. But when we do this integration with Unity Shell, we'll do it in a more controlled fashion. We will rely a lot on this, but it'll be a little bit more concise. This is strictly an exploration of how this works and trying to figure out all of the gotchas. So apparently there's more to it. Let me reference an example I have quick, and we'll see if I'm missing something. So I skipped a few bits. Let's skip this static preview. I don't know entirely what that is, but let's actually just begin a preview. That should work a little bit better. GUI style dot none, I guess. And let's end the preview. Cool. Then let's actually PreviewRender.camera.render. Let's actually render the camera that we have attached. If we don't do this, the camera doesn't actually render anything, which might explain the white texture. Hopefully it turns red. No. I may be skipping a few parts, and it may be causing some issues. So, one more second. That didn't work. Right. I think I have a suspicion of what is maybe happening. I'm guessing, since we're drawing this with an alpha, that it's just not there. And so, hopefully, if we add something, that's not going to work. So the idea is if we add something, like if I do a preview, there we go, preview render camera dot mesh. No, what am I doing? Draw mesh. We want to draw our mesh with our material. Actually, let's just use our matrix 4x4 identity. So this will be 0, 0, 0 position with the identity quaternion rotation and 1, 1, 1 scale, I believe. And then we should have the material there with a 0 subindex. We'll just take the first one. There we go. Material, we're going to call this the material. And this the mesh, so it just makes sense. And so this should draw our mesh, and now we should hopefully see a box on the screen. That's the goal. I don't know if this is going to work, but my guess is there's an alpha thing playing in the... Nope. Well, this is going well. Am I missing something? Let's try GUI dot draw texture. Does that work? Yes. Okay. Cool. It's red. No mesh, but that actually makes a little bit of sense. And the reason is we didn't actually move our camera. So what I'm going to do, just to hopefully reveal some stuff, is take our camera, set the transform position equal to a new vector 3 of 0, 0, minus 3. 3? Let's do 10. So I'm just moving the camera back 10 units. It was inside of our mesh. Now it should be outside, hopefully. Yeah, awesome. So now we have a cube. Can't tell it's a cube, obviously, because, well, it's just a cube. So you can't rotate it because we haven't implemented any of that yet. But we have a cube on a red background, which is kind of gross, but all right, it's there. So I think we can add a skybox to this. How do you set the skybox of a camera? That's a good question. I've never done this before from here. Guess we'll find out. I'm sure it's obvious. Famous last words. Let's see here. Calculate oblique matrix? No, I don't think that's what I want. Reset projection matrix. Screen point array. None of these are what I want. Ooh, that's not it either. Huh. Active texture. No. A stencil buffer. We don't really care about the stencil buffer right now. Orthographic projection. No. Opaque sort mode. Because ideally, I would like to actually use a skybox. Ideally from the current scene. I don't know how you do that though. Let me see if there's an easy way to grab that. I'm also going to search add some searches to actually pull the current directional light from the scene you're currently in to actually grab the light and actually set that up. So the current directional light is actually going to be the light we're going to reference here. I don't know if we can reference it or if we'll have to duplicate it, but I want to create as close to what you have in your scene in this preview so it somewhat matches. And maybe we can toggle between like the default like Unity style one and what I'm trying to build, but I would personally prefer it if it matched the scene. So that's what I'm going for. So what we had to do is set the clear flags equal to the skybox. So that's the setting I was looking for. I don't know I was looking for skybox, but yeah. So clear flags, skybox, we get the skybox, and hopefully, it's going to be hard to demo this because if I select the light, it goes away. But if I can change this so it goes a little bit oranger. Hopefully, yeah, so the skybox will match. So the skybox is being pulled from our scene because it's just using the same camera. Awesome. I'm sure we could change that if we wanted to, but I don't want to. So we're good there. And then the other thing I need to do is grab our current directional light. So ideally, if we can just find a directional light in our scene and then just reference that, if we can do that, everything gets way easier, because if we're referencing that directional light, as that changes, we don't need to do anything because it's just a reference. So we don't need to refresh that or do anything special. If we can't do that, if we have to copy it, then we have to make sure they stay in sync as that directional light changes as you edit your scene, which gets a little bit more difficult, but we can work with that. So let's do PreviewRenderUtility. Is it best to just grab all directional lights and just save them this way? So lights equals find directional lights. Yeah, we'll just do this. So we're going to find directional lights. It's going to return a light array. And all that's going to do is do game object dot find objects of type light. That didn't work. Dot where the light is. What? There we go. Light dot type is equal to a directional light, and we'll just do a to array on that to close it off. And then all I need to do is return it. Cool. So that should grab all of our directional lights and set them here. Has no setter. That makes this harder. Okay, I'm confused now. If it has no setter, then I assume one already exists. That makes sense actually, because our cube is lit. It's white. So it's clearly getting lit. That just means this is a little bit more difficult then, because now I need to know how many lights I need. Huh. Let's do debug log. Actually, we don't need any of that fancy stuff. Let's do that. We can take that out. Actually, we can take out this entire line for now. And I'm going to just drop a breakpoint in. We're going to investigate that lights thing and see what we get, because I'm curious what it is actually doing. If it's already initialized and already has a light that's like straight on and we just need to change it, or if it has like 8 lights and they're all doing something and they're all just like disabled and we need to update them. I don't entirely know. There's 2. One is going to be in, let's see, it's a light. It is a directional light. The other one is also a directional light. One of them is slightly blue, and the other one is white. So this one is white because they're all the same. The other one had slightly more blue than the other ones, so I don't know why that's happening, but that's the thing. So we have 2 lights to work with. That's interesting. So, does this work? This might work. So this will take the first directional light in our scene that we find and set it to the first one in our array. Don't know how this is going to go, but we're going to find out. Didn't really do much of anything. So if I drop that all the way down, nah. This will be easier to test actually if this is rotating. So what I'm going to do is actually change this position and make it dynamic. I don't know the best way to do this because it's actually not going to update every frame, which might be a bit of a pain, but we can work with that. So I want it to be on the XZ plane, so it rotates that way around this and not like over the top or whatever. We don't need to touch the Y. So we're going to do a math sign here. This won't really matter one or the other. It doesn't particularly matter. We can do a time, and then for the other one, we just need a cosine of the time. And we are probably going to want actually, hold on. Let's not do that. Sorry about that. But we don't need to do any of that. We can do this a little bit easier, I think, because it's a transform. So we can do all the normal transformy stuff, right? There's no reason we can't do that. So we have it -10, cool. In here, before we draw our mesh, let's do our PreviewRender.camera.transform, all of the same stuff, but let's rotate this around vector 3.0 and along the y-axis. So vector 3 dot up, sure. And we'll just do a time delta. And that should rotate our transform around that. Cool. This may not look exactly as planned because I don't think it's going to update. Yeah. And so we get this, which is not ideal. The issue we're running into is, well, the UI doesn't update every frame. Now that we have the render working, actually, I'm going to remove these division by 2s. But we need to figure out how to do this. How do I make this update every frame? Preview render. So it automatically repaints it on the scene change. I needed to also repaint it every single update. Which I think, oh, this is going to be gross. I think this will work, but it might not be great. So what we're going to do is just call repaint in an update loop. I believe update gets called. I don't entirely know, so we're going to check. But hopefully, yes, awesome. So update gets called, and then update says, hey, repaint this window. So it does, and then we get this rotating cube. And yeah, cool. So it's lit, everything's great. It looks like it's lit straight on, and I don't know why. But that's a little bit annoying. Dot transform equals this dot transform dot position dot rotation. Actually, it's a directional light. Yeah. Maybe that fixes it. It might not, but we're gonna try it. So hopefully I can take this and do something like that. Select our cube. That didn't really work. It's still really bright. And I think, so part of that might be the blue from all of those other ones. So for int I from 1, well, I is less than our PreviewRender.lights.length. So for every other light, I'm just going to remove that intensity. So there's only the one light that's being used, which, again, this is straight up just hacking this together to make this sort of do what I want. I don't recommend it, but you do whatever you need. What do we want to call this? Intensity. And set that to 0. Cool. And so hopefully that looks a little bit better. Now let's rotate that a little bit more that way. Well, I see nothing. Oops. Huh. Zero. Let's set the intensity equal to 1. I don't know. I haven't tried any of this before, so we're kind of shooting in the dark. There we go. And so this is sort of matching our scene and what it is doing, kind of. It's not going to be perfect, obviously. That isn't really what we're going for, but it's close-ish. And it kind of gets you the whole, I don't know, mesh preview thing. Like, if you want to play around with this, you kind of get the idea. It seems it renders extra frames. Like if I'm clicking this, it actually re-renders it, which I'm not. It's kind of one of those things. So that isn't great. We'll probably add a click to rotate thing so you can actually pan it like you do this one. But we can do that in another video. This is as much as I needed to get done here. It kind of proves that you can do it. We're rendering something into an editor window, and I guess with this, theoretically, if you really wanted to get ambitious, you could build an editor into the or you could build a game into the editor. I don't know why you'd do that, but you could. So yeah, this is our cube. It's rendered into the editor window, and that's pretty neat. So next video, we are going to hopefully make this a little bit better, and then we'll start working on getting it integrated into this Unity shell. So when we do like a spawn primitive of, say, a test capsule, we can actually preview it. So that's where we're going. Hopefully it works. I have no idea how this is going to turn out. So yeah, if you guys have suggestions or feedback or whatever, or if you can think of other ways to use this, let me know. If you use this in any of your projects, I'd love to hear about it, because that's neat. But that's it for this video, so till next time, see you, Internet.